You did ask a question. I don't want to miss it when you said, why is it a good thing? So I want to say a few things. One, canceling, the initial concept of canceling was an example. There was a NASCAR driver whose father in the 80s said the N-word. So he lost sponsors 40 years later. And like, that makes no sense. That's cancellation. Sarah Silverman did blackface a long time ago. It was considered edgy, but socially acceptable. 10 years later, she loses a movie role. That's canceling. If someone comes out today, like Dylan Mulvaney, and does something that is offensive to people and that results in a loss of sponsorships, that is not, in my view, what canceling has traditionally been. Like, if a person right now does bad thing and we say, you did bad thing, so we don't want to associate with you, but that's how it's always been. No matter who you are, no matter the idea of cancellation emerged in that we're digging up people's past histories to remove them. That's the difference.
Well, to me, canceling isn't, yes. I mean, I do think there should be, as we say, consequences, right, for poor behavior. But to me, it's not, I think also there's disproportionate effects from somebody saying something that doesn't warrant the effects that they're getting. So people, if somebody lobbies for someone losing their job over saying something, a little joke, or not even doing anything. Sometimes people make things up or start campaigns. There's all these people like on Twitter right now, for example, who start these threads trying to, have people lose their jobs
But I don't really see that from the right.
I see that from the right all the time.
It's definitely...
There's a sense of victimhood. Like this is the other thing that I see is like, and this is something that traditionally was really associated with the left, is the sense of like, we're victims. And this is what I think happens a lot is like, we're victims. And now when we get a little bit of power, we start using this excuse of victimhood to then go after people because we feel like we're entitled to it. And so what I'm seeing now is those very same people who felt like they were victimized, which frankly, in some ways they were, because there was this institutional power that was used against them, right? And at this point, I think conservatives have had things like they were silenced, they were deplatformed, all these things did happen to them. They've lost jobs. So I do want to acknowledge that that is true. But a lot of them feel extremely victimized, and now they feel like there's the excuse because they were victimized to go after other people, and there's this rage that's building, and I feel it's very dangerous.
So to go back to what I was mentioning before, you said I said it was good. You said why, and so now I'll get to that. People have moral frameworks, and traditionally in the United States, the moral framework has been based on Judeo-Christian values. Very much, this country has been Christian for a very, very long time. People eventually started moving away from organized religion to varying degrees. We're seeing a rise in secularism. However, even with that, many people in this country who describe themselves as secular or liberal, especially staunch atheists, actually still have Judeo-Christian moral frameworks, such as Bill Maher being the best example. Bill Maher believes in free speech. Bill Maher believes in the right of the innocent until proven guilty. These things are actually rooted in the Bible. The simplest example, without going into Bible study, and I am not a Christian, by the way, is the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. If there's but one righteous man, I will not destroy these cities. And it was God talking to Abraham. Lot was in the city, blah, blah, blah. Abraham's like, there's good people there. You can't do this. This is what informed Blackstone when he made his formulation. It is better that 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent person suffer. Ben Franklin went up that to better than 100 guilty persons escape. So those are actually rooted in the teachings of the Bible. You will end up now with secularists who hold those values, not realizing where it comes from. The reason why I think it's a good thing is that the modern left, what we describe as woke, has no moral framework. Their moral framework can be described as postmodernist or fascistic. Fascistic in the sense that they believe there is no truth but power, which is a core ethos of many of the, like, what I would describe as like higher level thinkers among what we would describe as woke. They believe that there is no truth but power is the simplest way to explain their moral framework, which is described academically, say, by the late David Graeber, the anarchist anthropologist who despised being called that was a fascistic moral philosophy. That is not something held by the modern, what we would describe as culture war right, who holds more a classical liberal and Judeo-Christian moral frameworks. What ends up happening is you get to these positions where classical conservatives are very classically liberal in a certain sense. They're civil libertarian in a certain sense. Not all of them. Some of them are actually very authoritarian. But you end up with them saying for the longest time, live and let live. We accept that. We disagree with what they do, but they're not doing anything about it. I'll give you an example. In West Virginia, I've been ranting about Berkeley County. 86%, the state, it's 86% Trump supporting the state. Berkeley County had a drag show in public with children. That's illegal in West Virginia, unquestionably. In fact, it's illegal to cohabitate if you're not married in West Virginia. Not that I think they should enforce that law. The point is, even though this state is the second most Trump-supporting conservative state, they do nothing about the things they think are morally wrong or violate their moral framework. This is because they are complacent and, to a great degree, classically liberal in that, you know, we're going to let you do your thing. We're going to mind our own business. That has led to a rise in a second country within a country that we've described as a multicultural democracy emerging within a constitutional republic. What happens? The more the multicultural democracy faction, what we would describe as woke, gain political power and use untoward tactics like cancellation, false victimhood, manipulations, lying in the press, etc., the more ground they take from the civil libertarians who reach the point of the pendulum swing, grab the pendulum with full force and say, I now understand we are involved in a cold civil war as described by a Princeton professor, not my words, or we're in a culture war. And you know what? When it comes to war, it's conflict and everyone tries to avoid it. But at a certain point, when someone's smashing through your borders, you decide you have to do something to push back. Abraham Lincoln famously suspended habeas corpus. People called him a tyrant for it. We look back fondly on Abraham Lincoln for all that he did. Conservatives now looking at this are saying we must use culture war tactics lest these people actually destroy our culture. Right. That's why I think it's a good thing that people are starting to say, hey, look, there's opportunity here. We can win and we're going to win.
Yeah, and maybe I guess I am more of an idealist in that way, but I just don't believe in abandoning certain principles in order to win a war. Because in that case, I'm like, what's the point of being on the winning side if you're going to be exactly the same as the side that you're fighting against?
Right. So do you think Abraham Lincoln was wrong to suspend habeas corpus?
I don't know.
Do you think Abraham Lincoln was wrong to rule by edict when he started issuing
decrees?
Because
you're looking back at the winnings and you're saying, okay, this was a better outcome.
I mean, suspending habeas corpus violates the entire spirit of this country.
Yeah.
The spirit of the nation, the rights granted by the founding fathers. Abraham Lincoln outright, he tried, I don't know if this is apocryphal, but if you read history, there's a debate over it, tried to arrest a Supreme Court justice for disagreeing with him. Members of the Maryland legislature were arrested for having Confederate sentiments, despite the fact that Maryland, a slave state, was with the Union. You can't defend those tactics, but we understand in war, we did not want the Confederacy to win.
I understand. And it's sort of what you were also talking about earlier when you were saying, do you let 10 innocent men, go to get, or guilty men go to get the guilty one, right? And my thinking on that has actually changed a bit, especially when you're like looking at, say, the Me Too era. And there was a time where I might have thought a little bit differently about that, but I've also heard stories.
Which way? Agreeing with the formulation or disagreeing with
well, I think it's better to let the guilty men go, to be honest, because I want to protect the innocent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And because I've known some people who were innocent who got caught. And it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
It's not. I think it's the easiest thing ever, but wokeness takes the opposing view that it is better that 10 innocent people suffer than one guilty person escape.
Which is why I don't agree with it on either side. And so when I see it happening on both ends, I oppose to it regardless. Because to me, again, I see it as a behavior as opposed to just an ideology.
I don't see the right as going after innocent people.
No, and it's so much more than that. I mean, we're talking about boycotts and how boycotts are woke, but the left has weaponized wokeness and put wokeness into our Department of Justice, they have judicial activists sitting on our courts right now. It's so much more than just, I don't like this idea being pushed on me. I don't like trans people. I don't like this. There's people in jail right now, sitting in jail, having their civil rights violated for just being present on January 6th.
Yeah, and that one is a bit of a hard one for me to talk about.
What principles do you have at that point? What is fair in war when you have the FBI colluding with big tech, colluding with Twitter to censor the Hunter Biden laptop story? They worked with big tech. The FBI worked with Twitter to do what they constitutionally could not, and censor a story.